It's time to grow and scale your coaching business the impact-driven, simple and sustainable way. Welcome to Rising Coaches with Sofia Bernardi. I'm your host, Sofia, mindset and business coach, supporting ambitious new and rising coaches to master their mindset, create an aligned and profitable strategy, and grow a six-figure business and beyond using the Rising Coach method. I built a $1 million business by the age of 26 in under 4 years, and I've coached hundreds across the globe to build incredible businesses that create freedom and fulfillment whilst having a whole lot of fun along the way. And in this podcast, I will teach you the mindset, strategy, and energetics to do the same. Let's dive in. Welcome to Rising Coaches with Sofia Bernardi. Today I have the honor of interviewing Hayley Lloyd. Now, Hayley Lloyd is a business and mindset coach, and she specializes in helping service-based businesses to own their full feminine authority in the online space and grow multi, 6 and 7 figure businesses. Now, Hayley's background is so fascinating, and you're going to learn this at such a deep level today. She went through from being, on drugs and alcohol most days for a long time to working at some of the top tech companies in the world, one of them being Canva that she worked at for 4 years, to then starting her own business and growing it to 7 figures in just 3 years alone. She puts her quantum growth down to her unique way of viewing authority building, and she's now dedicated to spreading this movement across the globe. Her story is so deep. I cannot believe the things that she has gone through and had to overcome and move through. One of the things that she shares, on its own would be incredibly challenging, I can only imagine, let alone all of the things. There are some trigger warnings, there are some deeper conversations, so please just know that if you get triggered by topics such as sexual assault, that is going to be mentioned very briefly in the beginning of the episode. So I just wanted to share that if you want to skip to after the 15-minute mark for safety, and you would have skipped her story there, just so you know. But this episode is so powerful. We talk about the things that most coaches and business coaches do not want to share online because it's uncomfortable to share that you created a business model that didn't feel aligned anymore. Or it's uncomfortable to share that you've had income dips and all of these challenges. And we really dive deep in this episode to talk about normalizing what it really takes to grow a successful business and what it really takes to move through challenges and lean into discomfort and growth. So this episode is so deep. I could have talked to Hayley for hours. She's so lovely, and you're going to love this episode. So enjoy, dive in, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think. Hey, Hayley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today, Sofia.
Me too. It's going to be epic. Obviously, we're just talking off air, and we have a lot in common and live really close to each other, which is really exciting. But today I really want to speak to you about your journey from going through a lot of struggles, several years ago around like alcohol and things like that. And then you transition to working at Canva, which is a massive global company that every coach will know what Canva is. They spend far too much time on there, to building a 7-figure coaching business in just a matter of years. And I've watched your whole journey, and it's been so incredible to see all of the evolutions and the shifts and the upgrades and the breakdowns, and you being vulnerable every step of the way in that. And I'm just so excited to unpack that today.
Yeah, let's go into it. It's definitely been a wild journey. So
I'm
an open book.
Yeah. So do you just want to share your story a little bit, because it's two completely different ends of the spectrum. And I think why this is so helpful for people to hear is that it really doesn't matter what your current reality is or your circumstances are. You are evidence, and my story, also can be evidence of like that. It just doesn't matter where you're at. If you really want to change and you do the work and you get the support and all of the things, that your whole life can fully transform. So I'd love for you to walk us through that journey a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So I originally grew up in the UK. I'm British. I grew up in a very small town with, one sister. I had, two parents that are incredible human beings, but not a huge amount of like emotional intelligence. And it was quite like an up-down household, I guess you could say. And so I grew up with a lot of suppressed. I didn't know how to communicate my feelings. I didn't know how to talk about things. We had a very you don't talk about the things that have happened to you. You don't talk about the pain. You don't talk about the things that are going on. If something happens, you just get over it and you just move on. You don't dwell on things. You've got the stiff upper lip. And so it very much created this armor that I would wear around. And from about 17, there were a couple of experiences between like 17 and 24. Trigger warning, I had sexual assault when I was around that age, and I just pretended it never happened and just like moved on. Just had a lot of shame about it all, and so literally put it in a tiny little box, threw away the key, and pretended that it didn't happen. And around like 23, 24, I had quite a difficult breakup with a long-term partner. I'd been with him for like 5 years, and it was a really, really difficult breakup that we had. And then I got straight out of that one, went into another relationship, and that one was very turbulent as well. And then, got into it's funny, I was actually talking to my partner about this last night because I hadn't like talked to him about some of the details of it. But I got to London, had broken up with this partner, had never processed anything. And I remember starting to date. The London dating scene is like fucked. It's kind of very similar to Sydney, where it's just terrible. And I got out of these long-term relationships, and I remember meeting this guy and being like, oh my gosh, like we're vibing really, really well. And we were seeing each other, I thought, exclusively for like a month. I was very, very invested in this guy. And it got to about a month in, and he just kind of started changing. And then it came out that he'd been talking to a load of other girls as well, and that he had never been in the mindset of like, we're both in this together. Like coming from someone that hadn't been in the dating scene in London, I could just never even conceptualize that people wouldn't like be trying to give one person like the full go. And that's just what the London dating scene is. And so he very quickly like educated me that like when you're dating in London, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You're dating multiple people. But that experience really threw me. It like brought up all of the wounds that I never healed. And I remember going out because I said to him, I was like, I'm not prepared. Like now that I know that you're dating other people, I don't want to date you. So we kind of like wound things down, but it just triggered a load of stuff to basically come up. And I remember going to this pub in the UK, and I went out with a friend, and we got drunk, but not too drunk. And I ended up coming home, and I was alone for kind of the first time because I'd moved into an apartment where I didn't really know anyone. And I was basically just by myself for the first time. I wasn't in a relationship. And I just remember this wave of like physical pain from the emotions coming over my entire body, and just ending up crippling, bending over on the floor, like hands and knees, just like screaming and crying because I was like, I can't believe how much pain I'm in right now. Wow. Ended up like in the fetal position, like on the floor, just like rocking myself. And I was just like crying and crying. And I made a promise to myself in that moment that I would never allow myself to feel that amount of pain again, because I had no idea how to process it. I had no idea where it was coming from, why I was so upset, why I was so anxious. I had no idea because I'd never spoken about it. If you spoke to my parents at the same time, they would have said, Hayley's so happy. She's always the one that everyone goes to for advice. Like, I had a really successful corporate career that was continuing to grow. I'd had like a star portfolio. I had my own design agency. Like, on the outside, like I had it all, but this was my experience on the inside. And it was in that moment that's where my alcohol dependency started, because I was like, I don't know how to process this. So the only way, I will never come back to my house, not blackout. And that was a very unhealthy promise that I made myself. And so it then, from that moment, it was about 4 years where I was just going out probably 5 nights a week. And the only times that I would stay in is when I would be so exhausted that I would just pass out. But if I was even conscious, I'd be going out. Like I was like, I don't want to be in, I don't want to feel the pain. Because I just had, I'd never done therapy, or when I had done like a little bit of therapy, it never went anywhere. It never helped me. And so I was just going through the motions of just numbing, and what started out with just alcohol then turned into like a Coke addiction, doing Coke before work to get to work. And then when the pain starts to come back at lunch, going to the pub, having 3 beers, then going back, finishing the day, and then going out again in the evening. And then I just basically realized that I was in this toxic cycle of just numbing and numbing and numbing. And I had this moment in the UK where I was like, if I don't escape this friendship group that I'm in, lovely, lovely girls, but we were just such bad influences on each other. It was like just a toxic group, nothing wrong with them as people. And they were very lovely as individuals, but like as a group, it was just as a drinking culture. It was, whatever. I was just like, I'm trapped. I was like, I will not survive, like, if I stay in this group, because I was getting myself in really dangerous situations, like the stories that I could tell you. Like,
even that alone, I'm just
ridiculous.
like, it's actually remarkable, like where you're at in your life, knowing that is your past and your journey. Like I've gone through a breakup that wasn't even unhealthy by any means, and that nearly like broke me into a billion pieces. I can't imagine like not only one unhealthy relationship, but like multiple, paired with all of these other things you've just shared, how painful that must have been. And it makes so much sense when you take the time to share all of that, and thank you for doing so, that it makes sense how people end up in those situations of drugs, alcohol, numbing, because that's a lot of pain. And, humans, that's really, really hard for humans to go through. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Yeah. And, it was also because I had done a stint of actually when I was in one of the last relationships before I went through the last breakup. I ended up having an ectopic pregnancy. And so I was forced to like stop drinking. And it was over that I actually started the first coaching business where I was teaching people to design and everything. But as soon I ended up, that relationship ended, the ectopic pregnancy completed. And then I had no reason not to drink anymore, which is then where, it really started like spiraling. And so I always had this, part of the reason that I've now been sober for 4.5 years. And part of the reason that, when people say, why can't you just like, my mom's such a prime example, like, why can't you just like be able to just have one? And it's like, my brain can't, I don't have that relationship. If it's one,
and
it's
fair
lockdown.
enough. That's a really traumatic past, to be honest. Like I think it's amazing that you set that boundary for yourself and you just honor that.
Yeah, totally. Because, I do definitely have this thing in the back of my head, because it's happened once before, that if I did start drinking again, then I'd lose my business, I'd lose my life, because I have experienced that before.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess anyway, so that's kind of where I came from. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to completely shake up the situation and I'm going to move to Australia. So I had like a friend that was moving to Australia and I was like, I'm going to come and stay with you. And then I ended up loving it. So I moved over really, really quickly. And got over to Australia, was living in Sydney for a while. And for the first year, my drinking actually got worse because I didn't have any Coke. Coke's super expensive over here. It's just like talcum powder, just doesn't do anything. And so I had created a very strong resilience in the UK to be able to sober myself up really quickly, but still drink a lot. And so when I came over here, I just got really sloppy. And so the dangerous situations just got worse and worse, where like I wouldn't remember getting home. I had no idea. Like I'd end up at someone else's house, in whether it's a house party or whatever, no idea how I got there, no idea where I was. And there was like so many of those that like, one New Year's Eve, I was just like, I had the most terrible, harrowing like experience over like a week that happened. And I was in my bedroom by myself listening to the skiff club, which was like somewhere very close to me, a party that was going on. And it was like, we're having the best time of our lives, blah, blah, blah. And I remember calling up my mom and just being like, I now understand why people unalive themselves, because I don't want to be here anymore. Like, I don't want to experience this pain for the rest of my life. Like, I can't do this anymore.
That must have
And
been
so
so
that's
hard for
when,
her to hear as well.
very difficult. We're on different sides of the world,
Exactly. Yeah.
nothing that she can do, nothing any of my parents could do, nothing my friends could do. No one's there. And it's just, yeah, it's a really, really confronting experience for everyone else. I was very lucky that they were very supportive and very kind and like really like guided me through that. But yeah, the next day I was like, I need to make a shift. And so over a period of then 3 months, I like got a coach, and I started actually coaching. And that's when I learned about like, oh, okay, what's this thing called life coaching? And in one session, I basically learned more about myself than in all of the 3 years of therapy that I've been doing things. And I was like, I want to learn more about this. So I did a life coaching of diploma, a life coaching diploma. I did an EFT practitioner training. I learned how to do hypnotherapy. I learned all these modalities to heal myself, because I basically learned that I had PTSD from some of the things that were starting to resurface. And so it was coming out, I was having daily panic attacks, and not just like, oh my God, I'm anxious, but like would have to go to the toilet and my hands would go numb. I'd almost pass out. Like, whilst I'm working a full-time job in a very corporate, high-powered career, like on the outside, I'm fine. Everyone's like, oh my God, Hayley's fine. Like, she's doing so well. Her career is like soaring, I'm being promoted. But I had literally defined my entire worth by like my outer world, by like, I need to be successful. I need to be this. I need to put on this show. But on the inside, I was crumbling. And, I had certain fears around like being in rooms with like certain men of a certain age, and that's would cause like a panic attack, or it would cause something, and after a while, I learned that that was PTSD. So I ended up having to, and I was re-traumatized through a song actually, and ended up having to go through this really long journey of like actually healing. So when I now teach on like feminine authority, it's because I have had to, and feminine authority is basically like the holistic way of building authority, where you're healing your human and you are building authority. So it's like true authority. It's actually something that's honest to you. And you're becoming a more resilient, a more neutral, a more grounded human being that can run a business from a elevated sense of peace, as opposed to like panic. And the only reason that I teach this is because of the journey that I've gone through. Is like, I have had to heal myself. Like, my social anxiety used to be so bad that I couldn't have a conversation with more than 2 people in front of me without having a panic attack. I used to have to read off scripts of things. I couldn't, like, my mouth and my brain didn't connect. And so it, as someone that was previously in like a corporate career around like design, unique thinking, it ended up starting to affect like my full-time job, because I was like, I'm crumbling as like a person. I can't think originally because I just want this person to like me. I just want to be successful, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until I started like healing that my creativity started coming back. And, I ended up doing improv classes, like, and starting this business, honestly, was probably in the first years one of the most healing things that I could have done, because it allowed me to, having this conversation, speaking off the cuff would just not have been possible for me. And so, yeah, the everything that I teach has come out of, obviously, it's been very extreme for me, like the past that I have had. But without building my inner authority, I wouldn't have been able to be here. You then pair that with, I did have an 8.5-year career in corporate world, doing marketing, organic marketing, working for very large corporations, or working for very small boutique agencies. I had my own design agency in the UK. I have a lot of experience when it comes to organic marketing. When you pair that outer authority with the new confidence that I built, that's why the growth has happened so quickly, because I have the skills. I already know how to market. I already know, when I was working at Canva, I started off as a digital designer, and over 4 years was promoted to senior designer and creative producer for an entire team, was tasked with setting up an entire organic marketing, so SEO driven team with a team of 6 other people, managerial training, because it's like in companies like that, it's either sink or swim. You either grow really, really fast, because I started, there was 100 of us. And by the time I left, there was like 2000, so it's like the growth was like exponential, but it's like, yeah, without doing like having
That inner
both of those
work. Yeah,
elements,
yeah.
that fast growth wouldn't have happened. And really, if you look at like my whole career, whether it's like you're looking at just my outer authority and all of the years that I've been working, or just my work on my inner authority, it's actually been over 10 years that I've been building this to get to here.
Thank you for saying that, because
Yeah.
that is what trips so many coaches or service-based businesses or entrepreneurs in general, like especially in the earlier stages of business, that comparison of like, well, this person went from 0 to 1 million in 2 seconds or 2 years even. And here I am, like I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years and I'm barely signing a client. There's so much comparison. And so I really appreciate that you are so honest and share, like, since you started this business that you're in now, yes, that would be, you would look at that is very quick growth. But obviously, there is so much history behind that's really supported you in the lead up for that to be able to happen. Like you've had previous business, that didn't work out, and you've, worked at Canva and you've worked at really big other companies and have so much experience in marketing and strategies, that obviously it's not really starting at zero in the new business. Like you've got all this experience. And I think it's so important for people to recognize that more often than not, when you hear of these like really glamorous stories of like, I did this and then this in a short period of time, that there's a lot of context often missing. So I really appreciate that you shared that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's such an over glamorization of like fast results in this industry.
I know.
But if I'm, the people that have really fast results and they come out of nowhere, often they don't have the emotional inner authority to like hold it. Like,
And it
so a
comes
lot of people
crashing
have
down.
this,
Yeah.
and it comes crashing down, and then that creates trauma in itself, and then it's really hard to pick it back up because
Yeah.
they feel like a failure. That actually slow growth can be the most profitable and most sustainable over a period of time.
Yeah.
And it's like, the way that I explain it to, my clients and everything is like, when you're starting a business, you're building skills, and you are the product. And so you're the one that's got to learn. Yes, you've got a skill. So let's say if someone wants to coach, like they've got a skill, they want to coach, they've learned how to do that. Amazing. You can give impact, right? But if you have an online business, you aren't just a coach.
Yeah.
You also do have to be
a
the
content
marketer.
creator
You do have to
and the
be the content
marketer.
creator. You do have to be the team leader when you eventually, which is a different set of skills. And it's like, you have to learn all of these elements. You have to learn marketing. You can't just be given a template. You got to learn how to do it. If you want to sell high end, you got to learn the psychology of selling high end. If you want to build an expansive brand that, encapsulates your authority, you need to learn how to distill all your passions and interests down into something that is simple, that is consumable, that people will understand, and that you can communicate and articulate really clearly. You need to be able to learn how to put that into all of your content, create files. You need to learn, there's just you need to learn all of it. And I think people just think they see it as like this easy thing that they're going to do because it's marketed as that way by so many people. It's just an easy thing, just start a business and blah, blah, blah. And then people start and realize it's actually harder than they think. And it's like, yeah, it's because it's easy for people that already have the skills. But if you don't have the skills, you've got to give yourself time to learn the skills.
Just
and so
like
when someone comes into
life.
Exactly. And it's like, when people come into my programs and they haven't had a business before, I'm just like, you got to give yourself like a year leeway to learn these skills, and that's going to then be sustainable. Don't create these expectations in your mind of like, oh, it's going to happen now, because those are the people that end up not being able to hack it long term. Because the biggest reason that people fail is because their inner authority can't handle the inconsistency of being, they have this expectation that they feel like is never being fulfilled. And like, it's just the wrong energy to start a business from. You need to come at it from like, I have a desire to learn these skills. I have a desire. If you're just doing it for like, I want to build a lifestyle, wrong reason to start this business, just the wrong reason, and it's like, you got to find like more meaning. Like, I love to create content. Like, you can, if you just want to coach, like there's so many incredible opportunities, like in corporations, you know, being a co-coach in someone else's thing. If you want to build a business around coaching, learn to love being a marketer and being and experimenting and like trying all these different things. You've got to love those parts. Otherwise it is going to feel like an absolute fucking slog.
Yeah, and I hand on heart agree. I started my business about 4.5 years ago, and I started because I wanted to coach. I wanted to help people, and kind of like you, when I discovered what coaching was, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, and that's where I realized, all these coaches, I didn't even know that was a thing. All of a sudden, I was like, wow, this is why I've never known what to do with my life. Like, this is my thing. And I immediately dove into it, but I did not get into it for business or marketing reasons. And I found the very beginning so difficult and emotionally challenging. And it wasn't until I realized, like, actually, I'm starting to see that, yes, coaching is like helping people is why I'm here. But if I want to be able to do that, I have to learn to love where I'm actually going to be spending 80% of my time. And that's the business side of things. And I had to fall in love with it. And so I removed what didn't feel good, got like brought in what did. And it's on this ongoing journey. And now I love the business side so much, if like, the most, like it's so much fun. But that's been a journey. So I totally agree with you. Like when I hear people say things like, I just find it so hard to create content or do this or do that, and they ask for advice, I almost find it difficult because I don't have that problem of needing to convince myself to do those things. I want to do them. And that's really what I'm hearing from what you're saying of like, when you fall in love with the way that you grow your business, you don't need motivation. You want to do it. You wake up desiring to do it.
Yeah, totally. And I think as well, I started this business alongside a full-time job, and that was intentional because yes, I had like a desire to one day leave, corporate. But ultimately it was a side passion. It was a passion project for ages, and I just really loved it. And what's really funny is like when I think back on like my childhood, when I was a weird kid. Me and my sister were both weird kids. My sister would just lock herself in her room and play guitar. She's now the guitarist for Machine Gun Kelly, so that worked out. And then I was like locking myself in my room and learning how to code. And there was this website called Neopets. And so you could go onto Neopets and you could basically create a little pet. I never did any of like the games, but you could create these things called guilds. And guilds, you'd basically name them, you'd design them, you'd brand them, you could create marketing for them, and then you'd go on these guild forums and you'd basically sell and market your guilds and get people to join, because people could only join one guild. And I didn't realize, but what I was basically doing was creating businesses over and over and over again, and, designing something, creating all the branding and launching it. And that was when I was like 13 to 15. And then when I was 15, I was like selling graphics, to people. I had like, that was like when I had like my first business, when I was like that age. And I'm essentially doing the same thing now. So for me, it's always been like a love. Like I've always really enjoyed the creativity of like starting a project, of building something and like seeing and creating a community around it like that. I've always just really enjoyed that. And so it's become like a natural expression of like who I am. So it also makes sense that, this is built in the way that it has because it's a genuine passion. Like if I was the projects that I enjoyed doing the most when I was in corporate were pitches, where it's basically like you work on one project, you create essentially like marketing, branding, and like a cohesive, like essentially pitch to get buy-in from stakeholders. And it's very similar to a business as well. You may come up with like a business slogan. How are you going to do the visibility plan? How are you going to do this? And then you pitch it to people, and you worked on that for like 3 months or whatever. And that essentially replicates me creating programs, and it's, so I've always had this desire just to build community. And I think whatever, because there's lots of different business models that people can have. It's like finding the one that you like the most. And so if someone does have like a desire to just, I really want to coach, then probably the private coaching model is going to work really, really well for you. If you like building communities, then probably building like larger masterminds or memberships is going to be really fulfilling for you. And it's about sort of finding out like what you really enjoy to run and the elements of marketing that you really enjoy as well, because we're all going to be so different. Like, do you enjoy video content? Do you enjoy writing? Like, there's lots of different ways that live events, like all of them can be brilliant funnels.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agree. Before we dive deeper into, I suppose, where your business is at now and some shifts that you've gone through in the last year or so to get there, I just want to wrap up where you were still in your full-time job and in your business, knowing that a lot of the people listening are sort of in that phase. And you worked for a huge company, Canva, as we've mentioned. I'd love to hear, knowing that Canva is such a it's just growing so rapidly, and it's the founder is a female as well. I'd love to know, like, did you learn, well, like, were there any key learnings from your time working there that have actually like directly then supported you with your coaching business? Because I can imagine seeing that just exponentially grow whilst you're in it, like, would have been kind of mind-blowing to witness, and then knowing how it's recognized globally today. And yeah, I would just love to hear if there's any specific learnings there, because when your environment plays such a big role in how you feel, right? Like, who you surround yourself, you become, right? And I can imagine like being immersed in the shifts there would have really supported you to normalize certain numbers or team or structures or pricing or whatever it is. I'm dedicated to providing you with as much valuable free content as possible to help you to grow and scale your coaching business sustainably. That's why I'm constantly rolling out new resources and events for you. To ensure that this podcast stays fresh with the latest offerings, I've compiled all our current free and paid offerings in one convenient place. Simply head over to www.sofiarosebernardi.com/links or follow me on Instagram at Sofia Rose Bernardi for the latest offerings. Thank you so much for being a part of this community, and let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a great question. I mean, the role, I was there for 4 years, and the role taught me so many things.
Aside from the obvious of your graphics and design being fucking next level, like that's a given. But outside of that,
I'm trying to think of the top ones. So I think one of them was definitely this idea of MVP. An MVP. So when Canva was just starting out, it was like a really like bog standard app. Like it was, and they call it MVP, minimum viable product. And that was what we always worked towards. Now, as a designer myself, started off with a designer, there is always an element of like perfectionism that you have as a designer that wants things to be like perfect. And one of the things that I had to get very used to quite quickly was that your first iteration of this isn't going to be the last. And sometimes you just need to get it out to test it. And literally get like real time like feedback on like the app and how they use it, what they understand, what they don't understand, and stuff like that. And we would get to see all of that from like the product teams, so that we could like use it to inform like our own marketing and stuff. And so even like landing pages and sales pages, we'd get like version 1 up or something, and then knowing that it was just version 1, and it's like that we were then going to like, if it didn't work, it's fine, roll it back.
Oh, sorry, your microphone, I think, just turned off.
Hello?
Oh,
can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's back. Sorry, it just like disappeared out of nowhere. All good. Keep going.
Weird. Yeah, but another thing that I learned was, I mean, there's honestly so many, but I remember doing this one project and I was working on redoing all of our main, so it's like there's this one part of the Canva SEO, so organic marketing pages, that is like the main source of traffic organically that grabs from Google. And we were basically redesigning like all of these pages. And yeah, I spent probably about like 9 months to 12 months on this project, redesigning all the pages, working with the developers, and we made like 10 pages to roll out. And so we rolled out all of these 10 pages, but then the Google algorithm like changed on the same day about how they ranked like SEO. And so we didn't then know what was because of the changes of the design and what was because of the changes to the SEO requirements. And so it became like a lot more strict. They required like a lot of other things in order for things to rank. Which required us to redesign the pages anyway. But because we couldn't see what had happened, we basically needed to roll everything back, and that entire project was canned like within a day. And so an entire like
Wow.
9 months to a year that I had been working on this one project just got put in the bin. And this is very, very standard with startups. Like, you may be working on a project and it may disappear the next day because you're constantly in this flow of just like experimenting. You have to have an experimenter's mindset. And if you don't have it, you're going to get left behind. And that's probably one of like the biggest frustrations of people with, that are working at startups, is like, you can be working on a project for ages and it could never see the light of day, because you just realize, just before it's about to go, that it's not going to work because you've got some feedback, or you've started something else and something else is working, blah, blah, blah. And so that's really come into business, because it's like, I always talk about running your business like a data scientist because of this exact thing. Like, we've got to be able to, if I am trying a new angle for a program, I'm experimenting with it. Do I know it's going to work? I've got no idea. Do I know a program is going to feel good when I'm launching it? Do I know a business model is going to be for me? I've got no idea. But I have this skill, and it is a skill, of being able to separate out my person from the changes and shifts that I'm making in my business, because the two things are separate. And business by default, whether you're a large corporation or a tiny little startup, is about experimenting. And if you can't experiment, your business won't be successful, because it's all about, inevitably, if you're running a test, there's either going to be like, this is right or this is wrong. And like, both is a success, whether it's right or wrong, because you've learned something. And so it really, really taught me that. But then also did very much normalize things like big numbers, because, we'd have all hands meetings and talking about like new valuations and stuff. And it was a very expansive sort of place to play in, to like talk about, returning customers, new customers, and how the business and the growth of the company was going. Like, when I first started, I knew every single person pretty much. When I left, I could go down to the canteen and not know anyone. And yeah, it was an interesting time. But what was really interesting as well was like, it's a really brilliant company. Like, it really, really is. And Mel is like she's like a definition of a feminine authority. She's like so driven by like her emotions, her heart. And she was an incredibly like inspiring person to work around. So yeah, there's been so many things. Like, I'm sure if you asked me like a specific thing, there's probably a lesson for it, because it's like, it was literally like being put in an accelerator.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of very young people that were hired there, and we were all just like put in these positions of like, grow fast or die, in the company.
Yeah. And this is why I wanted to ask, because I just the way the company is, and that it's, on the newer side and it's very young and all those things, I just think, yeah, you couldn't not have learnt so much from it. So I just really needed to ask that. But yeah, now moving on to your business, like, from listening to your podcast, seeing your stories and having conversations with you, I've noticed that it's not been just straightforward, and no one's business has, if they're going to be completely honest. And I know that you've transparently spoken about how, I think it was last year even, the way your business model was structured, you lost all of your time and freedom and were sort of burning yourself out with back-to-back calls and just the structure of things. Could you walk me through like kind of what that looked like and what that transition phase looked like? Because it sounds like you sort of, grew out a business model, and it's uncomfortable when you want to change one thing about a program, let alone like the whole thing. It's a very uncomfortable process making these changes in business.
Yeah, great question. I'll start with some context first. So the business model, so it wasn't that I was burning out. I actually loved what I was doing and I had a lot of energy, but what I realized was, as a woman that wants to become a mother, my business was dependent on me. And
Mm,
so if I was bottlenecked in the extent of I couldn't scale any further because I was like, I had a lot of private clients. I wasn't back to back on calls, but I had quite a lot of calls. I invested a lot of time into those containers. But I just realized that if I was to get pregnant, I would have to refund people money. You know, if anything happened with the pregnancy or whatever, you can't just take like months off when you're doing this kind of work. My business just wasn't set up for being a mum. It wasn't set up for taking a holiday. You know,
mm,
it didn't have like monthly recurring revenue for a year in advance. It had it for like 2 months.
mm,
And there was just this moment where I was like, this doesn't feel very scalable for where I want to go and the life that I want to live. Like, I want to be a present mom. I want to have, you know, more space in my calendar. I want to build out one-to-many spaces. But because I was so like bottlenecked by private coaching and having like, you know, more calls, being in Voxer a lot, like I spent a lot of time in Voxer. Um, I just didn't have any time to work on the one-to-many offers either. And so despite wanting to build out these one-to-many spaces, I didn't feel an integrity selling them as they were because there was onboarding that was missing. There was just some very basic things that like the program needed to get it to a place where the experience that someone would
at
have
your
coming into a
standard. Yeah.
container was not overwhelming. It
Mm,
was like cohesive. And so, and the other context that I want to give is like, I see it a lot in this industry where people will then use it as part of their marketing tactic to be like, oh, you know, I changed everything like 6 months ago, but they're not honest about it when it's happening. This was something that I was very honest about, like when it was happening. And I think we need more of this in the industry of like, when someone's going through a pivot, like, or something's happening, just be honest about it, you know?
as
And
into
so
your clients or publicly?
publicly, both. You know,
Mm,
I told people I was winding it down. Like I did podcast episodes where I spoke about it. You know, something's going on, like I'm shifting things. I still showed up, I still gave value, but like I was very honest of like something's going to be changing and shifting because something has to change and shift. I'm going to be changing my whole business model, blah, blah, blah. As I like before I'd even gone into this next launch or knew it was going to work, I'm creating content around like this is, you know, why I've decided to do this, just because it adds this layer of like transparency that I think people valued at the time, you know. So it kind of just brought people along on the journey with me. I had no idea whether it was going to work, but yeah, I just had this desire to just make it a little bit more focused on one to many and really building out larger spaces for a longer period of time as opposed to it being on one to one. So all of my reoccurring revenue in October of 2023, I shut down. And, you know, I'd been having pretty consistent like 90 to 130K cash months from basically January. And everyone said to me like, why would you change your business model when it's working? You know, this feels like terrifying. Why would you do that? But I just knew that it wouldn't ever give me the ability to be a present mum and to the ability to be able to take, you know, some time off if I didn't really like make some of these changes. So I wound down all of my evergreen offers. I stopped selling all of the spaces that didn't feel in integrity until I changed them. I wound down all private coaching and I basically cut everything. And so I took an
mm,
income dip and my income dropped to about 30K, which, you know, when you've got like team expense, I've got a very small team. I've only got one full-time employee and two part-time employees, and then my own salary. You know, that it's my own salary is
quite
probably
lean.
like the biggest outgoing that I have, but it's, you know, it's 30K for my business was
It's
quite a
still a
shock
jump.
to it.
Even if that's like fine for you financially, it's still a major jump and that would have
It's a big
naturally
jump.
dysregulate you. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the thing is it actually didn't. And I think
Mm,
that's because I'd been preparing for it. And I do a lot of this
true.
inner authority work. And a lot of it is about creating neutrality. Is that I've been doing this neutrality work for so long that I had built the trust of what I was doing. And so there were some moments where I had like a, oh my God, what am I doing? Because we were also buying a house and I was bringing on a full-time employee. So the full-time employee, I was bringing her on during this dip. And it required me to trust myself so much. And I just all of the practices. I have a program called Feminine Authority Manifestation School, FAMS, which is all about creating neutrality, bringing down reactivity so that you can be like a more grounded, like authority, like really build that inner authority. I was just doing it for like up to a year, it's like I'd just been doing it so much. So I was actually very regulated through that whole time. And I was just building in the back end, like winding things down, building, building, building. And then when it got to January and we did the big launch, we had the biggest launch. It was a $280,000 launch. By mid-February, we'd made over $350,000 for the whole of the year already. And it was, one of those moments where and then we also bought a house. And some other things happened as well, and moved within a month, all within that time span. So, it just really goes to show, like, when you have like the right strategy, when you set the stage, sometimes pulling back to go forward can be exactly what you want. And now, if I was to show you my calendar, I had a training this morning and then I have this call and that's it. And most weeks I have so much free space. I have one full week off per month, and it's my business is now set up that if I do become a present mom, it's set up more for scale as opposed to me being the one that has to be in the containers all the time in order to keep it chugging along. So yeah, it was a big decision, but it was the right decision. And I think, as you're saying, Sofia, it's very true that not enough people talk about. Sometimes it's really normal to take a step back to like create what you actually want. It's actually so normal. Like, business isn't meant to go like just up, 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 up.
No,
it's not meant to do that at all. It's actually meant to be like, we learn something, we iterate, we pivot, we maybe there are some businesses that are seasonal. Like, my partner owns a sustainable softboard company, and he knows some people that own like sunscreen companies. The majority of their sales comes in like 3 or 4 months of the year if they're just in one country, and that's just normal. If they looked at like, what am I making every single month, it just wouldn't be an honest representation of their business as a whole. And I think that's the thing that this industry loses sight of so often. Is like, we just see everyone else's success stories after success stories, and we just think, oh my God, we should be going up all the time. And it's like, says who? Like, that's not real business. It doesn't allow for real business. And in fact, it will probably lead to really bad business decisions.
Yeah, well, when you're looking at that lens of like the 30 days at a time rather than the big picture vision, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the long-term vision is really important when you're building a business, because the month to month is just like, it's this vanity metric that doesn't mean anything. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, what you're making in a financial year is the real like important thing, in honesty. And it's like, yeah, exactly. And the amount of profit that you have, and it's like, how are you actually managing that money? And I think there is, and fair enough, like, I get it. Like, we all want to get to 50K months, 100K months, whatever it is. It's something very easy to like tangibly hold on to. But so many people then feel like they're failures when, if the next month they make 50K month in a month and 5 days, it's suddenly not a 50K month. And it just doesn't matter. It's like, it's just a period of time. And that's not typically how normal businesses are seen, as like whether they're successful or not. So yeah, the sooner that people can take the focus off month to month and can look at long-term visioning, because that's another thing that like Canva really taught me about, was like, they are planning, Mel always talked about being 1% of the way there. And she was always stretching like 4 years in advance, always. Cool. And so it's like, it just taught me so early, like, just, this month doesn't matter. Where am I in 1 year? Where am I in 2 years? Where am I in 5 years? Like, what's the iterations of the business that I want to have, knowing that it can always change. Absolutely. But you've got to have a vision. Otherwise, where are you aiming for? You will always undershoot if you aren't aiming for somewhere.
So true. So that time where you decided you were going to pull back a little bit, what'd you do in that time? Like, you would have had to have some, probably, I'm imagining, like, scary conversations, like, I'm sure, did like any fears or thoughts come up of like letting clients down, or, you said a program was structured one way and now you were taking it back or changing it. Like, how did you kind of go about that?
Oh, great questions. Yeah. So,
and like boundaries, like they would have like seen you one way, like you're there, you're available, you're in Voxer all the time, and all of a sudden, like, it's very different. I can imagine that, Yeah.
Yeah, well, so the structure of like any masterminds that I had that needed to complete did complete, and those ones didn't change structurally. So whenever someone came into a space, like we completed that space. So if I had any private coaching clients, we completed that. But it basically meant that by December, I pretty much wound everything down. So then, like from January through to April, I then had basically like clear space. And the thing that I was doing there was basically going into programs, up leveling the content, literally just creating programs to elevate the content, changing and shifting the way that I was doing things. So I pre-sold like a mastermind in November, December, and then I completely changed what I had originally said it was going to be in a positive way,
Yes.
for the people by the time that we actually we're about to start it in a month's time. And so I just realized, because I was going through feedback, and this is kind of the process that I've been going through, is like I've been looking at feedback from the past containers. I've been, this was previously my highest level mastermind called Authority Plus. And so I was going through the feedback, looking at like, where could this be improved? How could I make this really expansive? And so decided to basically bring it into another mastermind. But the main difference is its proximity. And that was the biggest feedback that I had. And so the communication piece is just, you always just want to communicate it in a way where it seems like an incredible thing for them,
Mm.
so it's not just like, oh my God, is it okay? People want to follow people that are leaders,
Mm.
and that give you certainty of like, this is the move that we're going to make. The only caveat that I had was like, this is an experiment. So, if this doesn't work, like we can shift it. But also these people came in pre-sale. So they know there's always this caveat of like, when something happens in pre-sale, things can change.
Yeah.
If I was to change a container, like mid container, so like with, for example, the house, which is like the main mastermind that I have, things are changing and shifting all the time, because we're trying to elevate the space. We're asking for feedback all the time. We're actually going to be switching platforms soon, which is where the majority of our content's held. And that's just because after experiencing it and actually coaching in the container, I'm just like, we can make this better. So the way that I deliver that information is always through a positive spin, and just being like, this is going to be an experiment, and I really want your feedback. Collaborate with me. Let me know how it goes. Like getting people involved in the transitions, in the changes that we're making. One of the changes that I'm making at the moment is I'm experimenting with all private calls being audio only. Some of my clients that have been with me for years, having a conversation with them, hey, just so you know, the structure of these calls is going to change. This is an experiment. If there's any issues that you have, let's have a conversation about it. Just being really open to having a conversation about it, and explaining why I think this could be positive. Because now I've had quite a few mentors that have been audio only, and it's really just allowed me to like just focus on the content, as opposed to looking at like, what do I look like? What do they look like? And trying to like, almost see what your face is doing, as opposed to just allowing yourself to like look off into the distance, go for a walk, whatever it is. And so again, it's like an experiment. So that's kind of like how I've been phrasing it, is like, and it's how I live my business. If anyone comes to any of my trainings, everyone will know I'm experimenting. So it's not unusual when then if I message someone and say, hey, I'm going to run an experiment, I'm going to change the way that we're doing this, I'd love for your feedback. My hypothesis is that ... but it may not be that way. And so when it's framed like that, people are way more open to experimenting, because it's not just like, oh, it's being done. And I think where I've seen masterminds and coaches go wrong with this previously is they take something away without giving something back or explaining it. So they just say, oh, okay, we're not doing those calls anymore. And they just expect everyone to be okay with that. And it's like, you haven't either given enough reason for that to happen, given another alternative. And all this seems to be doing is benefiting you,
And not
instead of
them.
explaining how this is like a teaching opportunity for the people in an existing container. So boundaries, content, format can shift, but it's the delivery of that communication and the delivery of that information that will dictate whether it's received well or received like a smack in the face with a lot of backlash.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's so valuable because like, yeah, as we've said a few times, like everyone goes through this. I'm like you as well. Like we're in, expansive containers surrounded by other 6 and 7 figure coaches, and they all go through it at some point in time. So it's so normal. And I think having these conversations can be really validating for people. we'll start to wrap up shortly, but something you did say there at some point that I think is really valuable is how you kind of, you sort of, I know there's been phases of it, but you've jumped from like 30K to 100K consistent cash months. Like, and that's the powerful word there. It's like you've had consistent 100K cash months. What, I know there's a few things, but what was maybe your experience of like the biggest upper glass ceiling that like what needed to shift to go from 30K cash months to quantum leaping to 100K cash months?
I do think that there's there's probably two things. One is like a capacity to hold on the inside, so that's the inner authority part. But the outer authority is having enough entry points consistently every month for people to join, and then stacking monthly recurring revenue. Is probably those three things. So the capacity piece is like, if someone doesn't feel safe to hold that amount of clients, to hold that amount of money, to hold that amount of responsibility, because typically like money blocks come down to a fear of change, fear of responsibility, or fear of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have one of those things going on, it will block, consistently. You may have one, but then it will come back down because you don't feel safe. And so it's about, regulating your nervous system to feel safe, holding and being responsible for that amount of clients, for that next level. The next part is, the monthly reoccurring revenue is like stacking the monthly reoccurring revenue. So it's not just over like 2 months, but it's over like, and this is a longer way of building consistency, but it's like stacking monthly recurring revenue can take 6 months, 1 year. It's like the period of doing that over the long term that really allows the consistency, because then by the end of the 6 months, 12 months, you've got a baseline of 50, 60K and everything else is bonus, which then sort of brings you to the next part, which is like having evergreen offers that people can join at any point, and having enough high-end offers. Because a lot of people, they'll have a high and then a dip, and it's because they're launching, and launches are great, but if you've got then no other way for someone to join you for 3 months, of course your income's going to dip, because you're just going to get a cash injection on the first day. But you've got to be able to create a product suite that allows you to have, consistent new income coming in from high ticket spaces plus monthly recurring revenue. So it is like a little bit of like a business model shift, a way of thinking shift. There are some strategic elements in there, and it probably is going to require like selling one-to-many spaces, which requires marketing shifts, for instead of prioritizing marketing private spaces, prioritizing marketing one-to-many spaces instead at a high-end level for a high-end cost. And obviously there's different business models. You can build a 7-figure business from a very low ticket offer. I would probably argue it's potentially a little bit harder, but that's because I'm known for high ticket marketing. And then, I typically am doing like high ticket stuff. So, focusing on the psychology and the marketing of signing high-end clients into one-to-many spaces.
Yeah. Love that. We've had some pretty cool conversations today, like your whole journey, your learnings, feminine authority, the things you've navigated in your business. And, what I hear lots of things in this, and I've even learned a lot, but I know that there's, we've spoken a lot about, objections or thoughts people have, or like unrealistic or unhealthy expectations about business. So to wrap up, before I get you to share like where people can find you, like what's your kind of thought leadership on working hard, or like kind of the grit or the mentality or the things that it requires to actually build a 6 and 7-figure business? Because there's a lot of languaging that goes around on social media of like, it's so easy, I don't have to do anything. Like,
oh God,
and I know that you have opinions on that. So I'd love to hear like, what does it take to build a really successful business? Because there's just that marketing on like the laptop lifestyle. I just press a few buttons by the beach and then nothing. Like you and I both have clear calendars. Like you're also my only call today. But personally on my side, I put in a lot of hours to have created this kind of lifestyle. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves about this
That's
industry.
why
is like,
I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, you know where to jab me. But I can't. It's so easy. And like, I'm going to be honest, I've even got caught up in these kinds of marketing myself, where like, there's someone fucking laying in a bathtub, like sipping Prosecco with a towel on her head. And she's just like, I did nothing today and I made $5 billion. And it's like, it just creates, especially for people that are just coming into the space, it creates this idea that it's so fucking easy. And it's just, here's the reality is, especially in the first 3 years, you're probably going to be working more than any corporate job. And the reason is, unless of course if you want this to grow over a longer period of time, the reason is because you're learning new skills, and learning new skills take time. And so I do count work, by the way, as like learning, creative stuff, like anything that is like even vision boarding, I count as work, because it's like, it's not,
It's going to support the
directly
growth.
linked to my business,
Yeah.
So, and I enjoy a lot of these things. So it doesn't feel like work a lot of the time, but those things are still necessary, right?
Mhm.
So you will probably, especially if you're passionate about it, you will spend a lot more time like on your business, especially if you are building this alongside a full-time job or a part-time job, which I absolutely recommend. I do not believe that you can build an abundance business or abundance mindset from a scarcity
$0.
mindset.
Yeah,
I just
agree.
don't believe that. And so all these people that are just like trying to leave their jobs too soon, it's like the fastest way to cripple business. Like,
Yeah.
some people will be the exception to the rule where they just thrive under pressure. But like the majority of people that I've seen, suddenly it becomes, I need to make money. Oh my God, how am I going to get a client? Help me get a client. Becomes desperation versus like abundance of like, oh, I'm doing this because I'm so excited to do it. I'm so excited to do these programs and to create content, to learn these skills. Very different energy, and people can sense scarcity. And so I think it's incredibly smart to have a part-time job or a full-time job as you're building it, but it does mean that you're going to be working more. When I was working a full-time job, I was very strict with my time, but I also was very, you're going to go through seasons with this. When I was balancing a full-time job, I was getting up at like 4 a.m., getting on calls before work, working from 9 a.m. through to 5 or 6 p.m., getting on calls afterwards. And then I'd work on the weekends too.
Yeah.
I was in my hustle era, right? And this is where it is, we go through seasons in our business and in our life. And so that was a season of hustle for me where I didn't see friends as much. Some things needed to be sacrificed in order for me to have that season. It was a season. There are then going to be seasons for my business where I may be doing a huge launch because I want a cash injection. I may be working a little bit more in that season. And then there'll be seasons where I'm focused on family and travel and, whatever. We always are going to go through seasons, but I think the resounding thing is like, if you want, there's a difference between a small business owner and an entrepreneur. If someone wants to have a 7-figure business, they're an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur is inevitably, you're going to have a job. It's a job. It's not a side hustle. And if anyone comes to me and I'm like, what do you envision for your life in the future? And they're just like, I just want to work half an hour a day. And, I just want to blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, that's a small business owner. And it sounds like as well that you want this to be built on doing no work. And so it sounds like you actually want to be a housewife. And that's really what it sounds like. I'm going to be totally honest about that. Like, no business is built on no work. No matter how much manifestation work you do, manifestation still requires aligned action. And it's like, if you're not doing aligned action, manifestation doesn't work. Why do they call it, when you're in Buddhism or any other like spiritual practice, why do they call it a devotional practice? Because it's something that you're doing. It's a devotion. It's hard work. Like, actually committing to like a spiritual practice is fucking hard. It's not meant to be easy. We actually aren't here to just have a nice life. We're here to like, for our soul to, I'm going down the spiritual route now, but like,
I love it.
we're here for our like soul to learn lessons, to experience pain, to experience difficulty. And it's like, we can use our business as a vessel for spiritual evolution, for soul evolution, but it doesn't mean that we're going to be doing no work. It means that we're going to be doing work to fulfill a mission so that then in the future we can live a life that we live. So yes, I have a calendar of more white space now, as you've said that you have as well. And that has come off the back of many, many years of whether it's corporate and I was just like hustle, 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 or when, I was building alongside a full-time job, more hustle. And now being able to have the space to restructure and have more space and freedom, but I still work. I'm passionate about what I do. I love serving my clients. This is technically work for both of us, right? But it doesn't feel like work, but it's still work. It's like, you're going to be working. And if you want to sell a program, if you want to do a launch, it's like in those launches, you're going to be spending more time on your phone, on your computer. And it's like, that gets to be normal, but you just got to enjoy it. And so if someone's like, oh, I don't want to work, it's like, it's probably more in line with a small business, which is perfectly fine. Be a
But just
small
own
business.
that. Yeah.
100%. Like, love it. Be a small business, but just don't try to become an entrepreneur if you aren't prepared to do the work. And that's just the honesty of the situation, because big stuff isn't built from no action. It's just not.
Yeah.
So I hope, that.
No, it
Went off
answers
a
it
tangent there.
perfectly. I always love asking, coaches that, because, I just think my podcast, or podcasting in general, is such a beautiful space to be like really open and vulnerable and give context. Whereas like in some people's marketing, it's just so, and I'm the same. It's not like I've never used the word easeful or ease, because I believe like ease actually comes from the hard work. That's what makes it easy. And so when I say that, but unless you're justifying all the time, it can be difficult to sort of get that context across. And so I always love to have these sorts of conversations to just normalize, hey, if you're finding it hard, or if you're saying you want one thing, but your expectations are elsewhere, and your behavior is elsewhere, then yeah, you're going to find it really difficult to move to what you want.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, the word ease is like, I think it has so many other meanings in there. Like, ease doesn't necessarily mean doing nothing. It means alignment.
Yes.
Ease means like, I enjoy what I'm doing and it is easeful and peaceful.
Yes.
It doesn't mean easy means I do nothing.
Totally.
Long time
But
you'll have
people
like,
just can misinterpret that stuff. It's so subjective. So they go, oh, it's going to be so easy. I don't have to do anything, and I'm just going to make 50K months if I just invest in this person, or I do this one same thing. Like, it's just, yeah.
Totally. And so it is just like rewiring what's the growth journey is going to be like, so that you can remove any of the expectation that says like, it's going to happen now. It's going to, just be in it for the long run. And there's no way that you fail. Be consistently open to changing, iterating, and finding the ease, right? Finding the alignment, finding the pleasure, finding the passion. When you find the passion, you want to keep on following that. Like, get out of your mind and get into your heart. Where's your heart taking you? Because that's going to find you the most easeful way, which is just about excited about this. It gets easy when we're excited about it. And it's on the surface, these sound like kind of basic things to talk about, but it's like, when it's embodied, it's like most people haven't embodied this. They know what it means conceptually, but they haven't felt it. And it's like, that's the thing that people have really got to find, is like, what is the ease for you? If it is, never working, then it may be that, going into real estate, or, marrying someone rich, is like slightly more aligned. But if you've got a desire where like, you're like, no, I want to creatively express, because like ultimately I think the best business coaches are artists as well, and that's a big background of mine, is like, I literally did art at university, graphic communication, it ended up becoming, but it's like, it's all expression. It's expression. And it's like, if you can find the art in your business, that creates the ease, that creates the passion and the joy.
I 100% agree. This has been such an expansive conversation. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, work with you? Tell us all of the things.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Hayley Lloyd. I have a YouTube channel, which is very, very small. I'd appreciate anyone that wants to subscribe to that. But I have a feminine authority series on there. We post new videos every single week. I have a podcast called The Hayley Lloyd Show, which gets new episodes every single week as well. And yeah, those are the three main places that people can find me. I have a main mastermind called The House of Feminine Authority, which is all about basically building authority and scaling your business in a way that is sustainable and honors who you really are. So yeah, that is everything.
Amazing. We'll link all of that below. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your expertise. It's greatly appreciated.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sofia.
If you thoroughly enjoyed this episode, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels our mission to bring you even more valuable content every week. It truly means the world to me. My promise to you is that if you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, I'll continue making incredible episodes such as this every week to help you to grow and scale your coaching business. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.